Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. Today I'm going to be talking you through a very important topic: which troops unit is right for you. Now, I'm not going to tell you which is the best troops unit, but I'm going to talk about in detail both the monetary cost of adding each to your collection, the points cost when putting these guys in lists, their profiles and their loadout options, and also some specific tactics and pros and cons for each troop choice and sort of what you want to be doing with each of them. Then you can look at that information and you can decide which troops choice is best for you when you're spending your hard-earned cash. So without much further ado, let's get stuck in. So what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about Tactical Marines, Intercessors, and Scouts. Before we go any further, let's just talk about the monetary cost of getting these guys into your army. Now, if you're starting a new collection of Space Marines or Blood Angels, then you've got a lot of options about which troops to take, and these are going to be the core part of your force. And if you're just starting out, you're going to use these guys a lot in every battle, basically, until you expand your collection. Then you may spread out and get different troops choices. But at first, you're going to want to spend some money on troops and then start spending the money as you expand the collection on your elites, your heavy support, all your cool stuff that you can get in there. So you're going to rely on this troop selection for a long time before you start spreading your wings, probably. So it's got to be right for you, and it's got to be right for what you want to do. Now, Tactical Marines are the first one I'll talk about in terms of money, and these guys are cheap. Now, you can get them new in box from a third-party dealer for around £20 to £30, depending on what you want. So you can get basic Tactical Marines, you can get Blood Angels, specific Tactical Marines that come with loads of spare parts for just a couple of pounds more, and I think that's a really good deal because all the shoulder pads you get, the special weapons, the power swords, all the extra detail, quickly build up HQ choices that look really nice just out of spare parts from the Tat Marine box, maybe the Death Company and the Sandguard box, all combined together. If you're buying all of those boxes, just as you expand in your collection, you'll have some really nice characters that you can build by the end of that. So, Blood Angel Tactical Marines, really good value, and I'd highly recommend spending the extra couple of pounds to get those over the normal ones. If you're not collecting Blood Angel, but you collect Space Wolf, something like that, I'm sure the same applies. By the chapter-specific box set, it's always worth the extra money. But, that's if you're buying them new in box. Now, you can get Tactical Marines a lot cheaper than that, new on sprue. So if you don't want them built or painted, you just want them fresh on the sprue, you can get them as cheap as £17 on eBay, which is just over $20, and that is really, really good value. Now, you might not get to pick the special weapon and heavy weapon that comes on the sprue. Sometimes you might get Melter, sometimes Plasma, sometimes Flamer. It depends on the box set they originate from. But you can get those 10 men really cheap because they will have come out of a combination box set, or someone will have bought a start collecting box. They won't want the Marines, and they can sell them off, and you can sell them off really cheaply. So people sell them off really cheaply, so to speak. You can pick them up really cheaply on eBay, and it gets even better than that because you can get Tactical Marines, built up, pre-painted. That maybe someone's selling off their Marines, moving on. They started with Marines and they're just getting rid of that army and going on to a different army. And Marine models, pre-painted, they're so common. You can get them from so many sources, bring and buy sales. Some independent shops just sell sort of old armies pre-painted, sometimes secondhand, that kind of thing. You can get them from so many people, and you can get them, for about £1, just over $1 a model, I imagine. I don't know what it's like in the States, but maybe a couple of dollars a model for a Marine. And that's really, really cheap, and it's a really easy way to get your Marine collection started. Because if you think of, I'm just going to start a Marine collection, it takes you a while to sort of jump and take the leap and start buying models. And whilst you're doing that, you can just keep your eye out for a deal. As soon as you see 10, 20 Tactical Marines go in nice and cheaply online or from a friend or something like that, that's the time to start your collection. Pick those up nice and cheap. They're the core of your force. They'll last you, quite a while, and you can use those guys reliably. Those Tactical Marines, that cost you next to nothing. And then you can start spending your money on all the elite choices and the cool stuff that you really want to spend your hard-earned cash on, and that are really going to take heads when you get on the battlefield. And it gets even better than that because you can get Tactical Marines absolutely free of charge quite easily. Now, so many people have collected 40k, and Space Marines are such a sort of big part of the 40k fluff that sort of Tactical Marines I would put money on are recognisable by most people who have had children or who are adults, certainly in the UK, and in probably anywhere where Games Workshop is relatively common, any country, because so many kids get into it and dabble in it just for a couple of years when they're maybe teenagers, and then they leave it behind, and some people get back into it, some people always carry it on and never leave it. But so many people have bought tactical marines for a nephew or a niece, if not their own children, that most households, or not most households, but it's relatively common, it's not uncommon for people to have just a little box of 10, 15 tactical marines, maybe broken in bits, but salvageable. You can maybe get 10 decent models out of 15 broken guys and a few spare parts in a little shoebox in their attic, something like that. I have been offered on more than one occasion by friends who have no interest in 40k, but maybe they played it or their brother played it, or sister perhaps, when they were young. And I'm in my 30s now, so my friends, they haven't played 40k or looked at it for maybe 10, 15 years. But those models are just taking up a little bit of space, just forgotten and abandoned in a box in the attic in their parents' house or something like that. People chuck them in with army deals as well. If you're buying models for your current army and you're also thinking of expanding into Blood Angels and someone's selling off their collection, they may be getting out of 40k. A lot of people sell off their models when they want to get married or buy a house, something like that, and they're selling off maybe a couple of armies, and you want to buy models for your main collection, which isn't Space Marines. But then you think, they've got some tactical marines there, and those, they may well chuck those tactical marines in for next to nothing or free when you're buying other models. So tactical marines are just everywhere. You can get them for absolutely nothing, and they form a really reliable core to your army. So I've gone on about tactical marines a lot there, but they are just absolutely, from a money perspective, the easiest and cheapest way to start a Blood Angels collection. Now, to a lesser extent, the same applies to scouts. Now, scouts are, cheap, but they're more expensive per model than tactical marines if you buy them new, because you get 5 in a box for £15.50, which is probably around $20, I imagine, in the US. But you have to pick straight away. Are you going to buy the general normal scouts with bolters, shotguns, that kind of thing? Or are you going to buy the snipers? It's the same cost for the box, but you can only pick one type. So you have to make that choice straight away. So I'll talk about loadouts on those guys in a second. But scouts, if you're not fussy, you can get them very cheaply online. They're one of those where a lot of people have collected scouts. The same things that I've talked about for tactical marines apply to a lesser degree to scouts. But you can get those guys cheap and easily from a variety of sources. Now, Intercessors, you're paying a lot more for. You're going to be paying top dollar. Now, these guys are relatively new models. They've only been out, coming up 2 years. And most people are, not bored of them yet. And if they've started that army, they may not be getting rid of them. So they're not going to be that common second hand. They're going to be more expensive second hand. And they're not going to come from all those random sources that you can pick the other troops choices up from cheaply and easily. They're costing around £30, which is around $35, which, if money's no issue to you and you just want loads of intercessors and you want loads of elite choices and everything like that, and it's really not a problem, then, that's not a consideration for you and you don't need to think about the other stuff. But if you want to spend the money on the intercessors, you're investing a lot of money in your troops choices, and for most people, that means that's taking away from the money they can spend on the fun stuff, the big toys. So let's get on quickly to profiles and loadouts. If you're looking at tactical marines and scouts, they both have weapon skill 3 up, ballistic skill 3 up, and then strength 4, toughness 4, 1 wound, 1 attack. Their leadership 7, sergeant's leadership 8 with 2 attacks, and their save 3 up. And the scouts, of course, only a save of 4 up. The intercessors, they're a little bit different. They have the same basic stats, but they have 2 wounds and 2 attacks also. So you're getting twice the Marine in terms of close combat capability if you're getting in the mix in combat, and they are more survivable. And if you've got these guys dug into cover, they can be really hard to shift. A unit 5 means you've got to fail 10 2-up saves, which is the equivalent of the opponent putting 60 successful wounds onto a squad of 5. Just to wipe out a squad of 5. So they're really, really tough. Those wounds make a big difference. So those minor differences in the profiles, the armor save lacking for the scouts, and the extra wounds for the Intercessors can make a big difference tactically on the battlefield. Before I go on to that, I'll just talk quickly about the loadouts, because the tactical squads have a massive variety they can take. And one of the things that they can take is a power weapons on the sergeants. Now, a power weapon on the sergeant is really a game changer when you're getting in troop-on-troop combat. If your OBSEC units are getting in a tangle with an opponent's OBSEC units on an objective, you'll be wounding on 3s or possibly even 2s if they're toughness 3, because you're a Blood Angel. And that minor ability to take that power weapon, whatever variety you take, is really a great difference that gives Tactical Marines a big bonus over Intercessors. Now, they also have a massive amount of flexibility in the terms of weapons they can take. You can take special weapons if you've got under 10 men. You can take a special weapon and a heavy weapon if you've got 10 men. And you've got the Melter, Plasma, Flamer, so many different weapons you can take, which give these guys such a variety of options. Giving these guys a Melter and then spending 5 points on a Melter bomb and having these guys just 5 men in a transport means you can just jump out 9 inches. And if you're within 4 inches, you'll be firing a Melter and getting 2d6 pick the highest on your damage roll at strength 8, AP -4. And you'll also have a Melter bomb that you can throw, hitting on a 3. It's 4 inches away, strength 8, AP -4, re-rolling wounds. So it's much more likely you're not going to get that horrible 1 or 2 and fail to wound. And that can crack open a vehicle or a transport very easily and let you dacker up the people inside. The tactical squads, because of the amount of flexibility they have, and the amount of different loadouts they can take, and the fact that they can go in transports, just makes them the absolute king of troop-on-troop combat. And also support. So they're really good at supporting, really good at supporting other units, because if you've got elite on elite combat going on, they've counterattacked your elites with their elites. You can counterattack with your tactical marines, and they're not going to want to waste their attacks on your tactical marines, or they might do because they're easy kills and reduce the attacks in on them. But either way, then you're getting more attacks back with your elite models, or you're getting attacks on them with that power sword, or just loads more attacks which will hopefully crack through an enemy elite unit's armor. So they can really weigh in whether you take them really cheap at just 65 points, or whether you load them up with a bit of plasma or a special weapon for close combat or a melter bomb or everything. Just so much variety, and they can really just kick ass. They can take objectives, they can do all kinds of stuff, and I'll talk about their tactics in more detail in a little bit. Now, scouts are also really, really effective, but they have to be set up to do a certain job. So you have to either make them sort of cheap and flexible and just effectively a troop tax where you're just taking them with bolters. You're going to sit them perhaps in cover, perhaps give them camo cloaks, perhaps not, or just keep them really cheap and run them around the battlefield. And hopefully keep them safe on an objective, maybe out of line of sight, and you're not really bothered at 55 points for a squad, whether they're involved in combat. And you've got a variety of loadouts you can take with them. You can give them a heavy weapon, so it's nice to take a missile launcher or a bolter. Heavy bolter, those are your 2 options. Heavy bolter, obviously, you can spend a command point to make it fire a special Hellfire frag round, which is good. Always nice to get some mortal wounds out there. And, there's a bit of flexibility there, but generally you're going to just sit them in a bit of cover or potentially even line of sight, depending on whether you've spent the points on camo cloaks and sniper rifles. And you're just going to shoot out with them and hopefully hold an objective. People sometimes have this idea of running scouts around the battlefield, but I can tell you right now, it does not work. Because the second you don't make it into cover, the second you decide, I'm just going to run out to support this little combat and throw my scouts in, the second they're left exposed the next turn, they will die. Scouts are too easy to kill, and OBSEC is valuable enough, even though scouts aren't that good in themselves. With the 4-up armor save, just purely the fact that they're OBSEC means that they will be targeted and killed because it's an easy snatch and grab for your opponent. So that is the risk with the scouts. They can be easily snatch and grabbed. And if you feel you need to run out to help support a unit, or you want to run onto another objective, maybe you've got a group of 3 units of scouts on an objective, all in cover, or with sniper rifles, or with camo cloaks, 2-up save. And then there's another objective sort of 18 inches away on the other side of your deployment zone that you're just not covering. And you think, turn 4, I'm going to run across to it. As soon as you break from cover, you're on your 4-up save, and the opponent, with just a little bit of dacker, will just see that opportunity and they will kill them off, because that's a small investment in firepower from your opponent's perspective for a big tactical payoff. So the scouts are very easy to clean up the second they're exposed. You need to set them up to do a job and leave them to do that job. You can't vary your tactics really on the battlefield with the scouts. That is my very strong opinion. I have scouts, I own scouts in my collection, but I very rarely use them. Even though those sniper rifles with the mortal wounds are nice, there's a lot of stuff that can take away cover, and then you're straight away on a 4-up save. And that big drop of 2 up to 4 up is just such a huge difference. And as a Space Marine player, you're just not used to having a 4-up save, and they just fall away so quickly. You just overexpose them, and you get them killed. Now, Primaris are really, their loadout options are much more restricted. You can set them up to do a certain job, kind of like scouts, and you can set them up to be really flexible and maneuverable by taking the auto bolt rifle, because that's assault 2 at 24 inches. You're always getting 2 shots, effectively like you're always rapid firing. So you've got that rapid fire bolt rule, even when you're moving around, which is, really good. That's really nice. It keeps them really flexible and makes them like bikes or Terminators, which can move and spray their bolters. So that's really nice to have that high output firepower. You are sacrificing 6 inches range for the other Primaris main weapon, which is the bolt rifle, because that's 30 inches. That's rapid fire. So you can't move, or you have to be within 15 inches, which is nice. That 3-inch difference on the rapid fire range, if you've moved, makes a big difference, because you can move 6. If you're 9 inches away, you can move into rapid fire range, which you can't do with tactical marines. So they're really much more effective with their DACA, all in all, whether you want to take the loadout that lets them run around the battlefield or cover hop. And because they've got that 3-up armor save and 2 wounds each, they are just that much tougher when you're running them out of cover. Now, it's really nice to sit them in cover, spray out, but then if you need to run in to support another unit and just sort of fill a gap, counter assault, get them involved in combat or something like that, or you just need to move them from one objective to another, or from one area of the battlefield to another, they are that much more survivable. And that makes a big difference. That's a huge difference. But they do lack in their options. You are just picking one form of DACA over another. Yes, you can take the Stalker bolt rifle, which is a 36-inch range, heavy 1, strength 4, AP -2 shot. And that is really, really nice, because you can crack through elite units that drop down near your lines or even further away. You've got a large coverage of the battlefield, and that AP-2 means you're really cracking open any infantry that you're shooting at. But the fewer shots, it's debatable, because when you're shooting at infantry that's still got a 5-up armor save, that's basic troops, Tyranids, guardsmen, that kind of thing, you're taking them down to nothing. Fire warriors are taking down to a 6-up, 5-up in cover, which is really useful. So that AP-2 is really good, but you are lacking a little bit of extra DACA, but you are again just picking one form of DACA or another, and that's all you can really do. You can't really rely on your Primaris. They've got more attacks, but you can't really rely on them to always win out against other troops in a firefight or in a close combat duel, or a combination of the two. Because if you're trying to take on another troops unit from any army, they will have some special rules or some special weapons half the time, and they'll be able to take on your Primaris, and they are just kind of too middle of the road. They're a great support unit. They're great sort of background noise, if that makes sense. And in the later turns, they can really be heroes. They can run across the battlefield, survive a load of your opponent's remaining DACA, survive down to a couple of men, and cling onto an objective and really, snatch and grab an objective in the late game. So I'm not saying they can't be heroes. So tactical means you can load out to make them extra anti-tanks if you're lacking anti-tank in your army. Tactical Marines, you can give them the anti-tank, add anti-tank to your army. If you need extra anti-infantry, you can give them a heavy flamer and a flamer, especially if you're Blood Angels. Whereas Primaris, each individual man looks, when you're looking at the model, they're beautiful and they look like a superhero. They tower over other troop choices. That's how Space Marines should be. So the Primaris are how Space Marines should be. The Tactical Marines are Tactical Marines, and they are supremely tactical. And, in my opinion, the overlords of troop-on-troop combat and excellent support units that can add a lot of variety and plug a lot of gaps in your list. So, overall, Tactical Marines are winning out on cost so far, and they're winning out on flexibility. So finally, some tips and tricks for these units. Now, there's a few significant different things you can do tactically on the battlefield with these units. Now, Scouts, as I've said, they need to be tailored to do a job, and then they need to stick to that job. Now, sniping with scouts, if you've got 3 units of 5 scouts and just spamming sniper rifles, that can actually start taking a toll on enemy units with invent saves. So if you're playing against knights and that kind of thing, 90, a cheap 3 squads of scouts with sniper rifles can start putting some mortal wounds on, but it's not reliable enough because you only get the mortal wound on the 6, and you're going to be struggling to wound knights normally with the sniper rifle because you'll need that 6 anyway. It's not that reliable. It's doable, but I don't think it's personally worth the points investment, especially as you're probably worth spending the points on camo cloaks, and that makes each scout 5 points extra per model, taking the unit as a total up to 90 points. So then they're not cheap anymore, and I don't think you're going to get 270 points worth of mortal wounds out of the scouts when you're shooting at specialist targets such as characters and that kind of thing. They're just not going to make their points back. Now, it's not always about making your points back. Often it's about tactical gain, but I just also don't think they get you that tactical gain quick enough. Yes, you can put mortal wounds and pick away at buff characters, but even with 3 squads of 5, you'll struggle to kill a buff character straight away the first time that you target him, and then he's done too much damage by the time you get to kill him, and then you've got to move on to the other buff characters. 3 units invested, all with sniper rifles, all with camo cloaks, just to hold an objective and try and pick people off is too expensive in my eyes. But it is a valid tactic. People do it, and it depends on the points level that you're playing at also. Now, the Primaries, tactically, they have the advantage, obviously, of the extra wound, which makes them a lot tougher. But there is a disadvantage to Primaries in terms of their toughness and their double wound. If an opponent has a little plasma gun sat on an infantryman or some kind of special weapon, something like that, a blaster, it's often worth just popping it at a Primaries unit, because if they're sat in a bit of cover, your opponent knows, well, they're 2-up armor, so it's going to take a lot of DACA to shift one model. But I'm in range with my special weapon. It's going to strip away the armor of the Primaries, maybe AP3, AP-4, something like that, depending on the weapon. And the multi-damage, if it's D6, you're almost definitely going to lose that Primaries. It's actually worth doing for your opponent, which means that the multi-wound aspect is actually a disadvantage when you're in the thick of it, when the fighting's at its toughest, because your opponent will think, well, I've got to strip down their obsec ready for the late game, so he will target those Primaries, whereas Tactical Marines fall nicely in this window in the middle where they're tough enough that they've still got that 2-up armor save, because they've got 3-up armor, 2-up in cover. So if you've got them sat in cover holding an objective and your opponent wants to strip down your obsec or get rid of them off that objective, it's not really worth him shooting special weapons, because multi-damage weapons, although they come with the AP, because remember, AP and multi-damage often come hand in hand, even though they've got that AP, it's not worth wasting them. It's a total waste to shoot them at Tactical Marines, but they're in the same position where they need to invest a lot of DACA to shift those Tactical Marines. It's still a lot of DACA to shift 5 Tactical Marines. So it's tough on your opponents, and if they've got maybe AP -1 weaponry, then it's worth popping at the Primaries and the Tactical Marines equally, but they're still both on a 3-up save, and then the Primaries are that little bit tougher. So in that case, the Primaries have the advantage. So Primaries, when they're in the thick of it, in a firefight, shots are going everywhere from all different units, multi-unit, combined unit combats and firefights. Your Primaries are going to win out against the sort of AP -1 anti-infantry sort of stuff that's designed to dig infantry out of cover. Your Primaries will be that much harder to shift. But against multi-damage weapons, your Primaries actually turn out to be a juicy target, because they're that combination of dangerous enough, they've got a couple of wounds, so it's not a waste of the shot, and they're obsec, so it's worth getting rid of them when the opportunity's there right in front of you from the opponent's perspective. So in the thick of it, I'd say that Tactical Marines probably win out overall in terms of survivability, because they still have that 2-up armor save. They're sort of not quite a juicy enough target, although they're obsec, they're just a little too tough to spend for your opponent to invest the firepower that they're actually going to need to shift the Tactical Marines. They'll either invest too little firepower, the Tactical Marines will still be sat there when the dust settles, or they won't bother because they'll be shooting that high AP damage weaponry at your Sanguinary Guard, your Death Company, or your other elite units and tanks. So they won't want to spend it on the tactical marines. So they fall in that nice little window, but they're not quite a juicy enough target, even though they're OBSEC. And as long as they're in cover, and even if they run from cover, they are again sat in that window. With scouts, they go up to a 4-up save, so it's definitely worth just spraying a bit of Daka at them to kill them off from your opponent's perspective. With Primaris Marines, all of a sudden you've got those Primaris Marines sat in the open. They're on a 3-up save, and even if they don't have multi-damage weapons, they will shoot a specialist weapon at them and take the opportunity to wipe out those Primaris Marines, because they're a juicy enough target to do that. As I've said, you know, if they've got AP -1, AP -2, that can take those Primaris to rolling on 4-ups and 5-ups, they can quickly shred them down with some dedicated specialist Daka. So when you're doing that tactic, where maybe turn 3, turn 4, you start running single units from your sort of multi-troop castle towards other objectives, then the tactical marines probably win out in that, because they're not. Your opponent will again struggle to shift them with the firepower that they're willing to direct their way, and that makes a significant difference. Now, there's another aspect to the tactical marines which also makes them very significant, which they use sort of transports. Now, transports are really useful. You can have them all in transports at the beginning of the game. And if you've got a big, tough fire armor line of tanks, and you've got all your troops in armored vehicles, then your opponent's really going to struggle, because all their Daka and their army is going to be wasted. And you can check out my advice on how to build a nasty list, because I go into that in more detail. But effectively, if you've got everyone in transports, that's really tough for your opponent to start off the game in their first couple of turns, and they really can't get to your infantry unless they want to. So depending on your opponent's loadouts for their army, they can really struggle. Now, Primaris, they can go in the fancy hover tank, of course they can, but generally speaking, you're going to have those out in the open, so they can't really present that fully armoured front, and your opponent will be able to divert your Daka at the Primaris. If you want to take an armoured list, Primaris are just a no-go. Very simply, it's just not really that viable. If you're just starting off with your infantry on the board, and one other thing about that is that tactical marines, they are only 65 points bare bones, and with a few extra additions like a power sword and maybe a plasma, they're not that expensive. They're still only 80 points. So if they're sat in a transport for a couple of turns, frustrating your opponent before they jump out and start shooting, then that's fine. You're not wasting that many points per turn in efficiency. And if you want to have them starting off outside their transport and shooting away, and if things get hot, you can hot them in the transport, then that's a good idea too. And that's sort of what I would advise as the general tactic for just not a pure mech list, but a list where you've got a bit of everything, a more balanced list. I would recommend having your tactical marines out like you would with your scouts or your Primaris. But the interesting thing that you can do with the tactical marines, you've got, comparatively to the other 2 units, is that you could have, say, 3 units of 5 tactical marines, and they can spray out a lot of Daka, just like the Primaris could spray out a lot of Daka, or the scouts could spray out a lot of Daka. If they've all got bolters or bolter equivalents, they're all going to spray out really well. And the Primaris potentially will do that a little bit better with their specialised bolt weapons. But you can have one transport actually cover 3 units of 5 tactical marines and a couple of characters. So 3 units of 5 tactical marines just with bolters is this, and a lieutenant, which would give them reroll 1s to wound, is the exact same cost as 3 times 5 Primaris Intercessors, because they're 20 points more for the Intercessor squad, and 60 points is what a lieutenant costs. So you've got to make the decision: would you rather have the AP -1, or roughly, or something like that from the Primaris, or the extra range or the ability to move and shoot with the Primaris, or would you rather be re-rolling 1s with that lieutenant? Remember, if someone comes at your castle, maybe they put in some deep strike units against your castle, would you rather have 3 units of 5 Primaris? Yes, they've got 2 attacks each, but they've only got basic close combat weapons. Or would you rather have those tactical marines that each sergeant could have a power weapon, and suddenly you've got 6 power sword attacks? That's really going to do some damage, or potentially scare and do some damage against a variety of elite units that could be deep striking into your back lines. They're also going to threaten characters. And you've got a lieutenant sat in there, and if you've spent just 4 more points and give him a power sword, then he can go to work as well. And you've got a character in there, so all of a sudden you've got not quite as many as attacks, but you've got a load of -AP attacks that can really chop up any troops that get too close. You'll just tear through them, no problem with that lieutenant. So you've spent those points, and those guys can really look after themselves really nicely. And if things get hot and you've just got a transport sat next to them, you can even just have a Razorback that can hold 6 guys. And that Razorback's it's empty, but it's got a decent weapon on top, a last cannon, assault cannon, your choice, a heavy bolt, it doesn't matter. And that's a decent fire support unit. And your lieutenant will be given reroll 1s. If you've got a captain in there as well, you've got reroll 1s to hit and to wound. Nice and cheap, really nice castle. If the enemy decides, I'm going to get rid of that castle, I want to shift it, it's going to take a lot of firepower to kill that many tactical marines because they'll be in cover. They've got a 2-up save. You're going to have to put, as I said before, 30 wounds on tactical marines. So that's a lot of DACA that they'll need to put on those tactical marines. And chances are a couple of them will survive, 2 or 3 will survive, even if they really focus on that castle and decide, I'm just going to focus it down and wipe it out straight away. And they've got a lot of firepower in their army. You can then hop the remainder of your tactical marines plus those 2 characters in that transport, and you can redeploy them, put them where you want, or just keep them safe. You've got another layer of survivability because they have to then crack open that transport and then kill the infantry and then kill the 2 characters. And if they've stripped down to 3 or 4 tactical marines, you can fit all of those plus 2 in a Razorback because it's got a capacity of 6 men. So it makes a really good getaway vehicle. It's also really funny when you can have that Razorback there, it's putting out decent firepower, and then you just hop 1 squad in there and just jet across the board turn 3 and just end up on another objective elsewhere on the board and take it. And it's really nasty for an opponent if you have just they've targeted one of your tactical marine units, taking it down to like 4 guys or 3 guys, and you just hop that tactical marine unit that's a little under strength plus 2 characters from your castle, and you drive off to somewhere else on the battlefield, and wherever they turn up, they are going to be most unwelcome in your opponent's eyes. If you've got a captain and a lieutenant, both power swords or maybe lightning claws, who cares, who knows? It doesn't matter. They can jump into combat. They can chop up a unit that was securing an objective. You've got 2 characters on there, and the tactical marines to give you obsec, and all of a sudden, and those characters then protecting those tactical marines in the later turns, and those tactical marines are protecting the characters from firepower, and it's just a really nice snatch and grab unit. So for a very small investment of a Razorback, you can just have this ridiculously cheeky tactic where you have a castle that's just sat there. If the castle gets focused on, it can escape and reposition. And you've got a unit, potentially a unit combination for the later game that can really make a nuisance of itself and really be game-changing, and very, very cheaply. So all in all, you can probably tell that my favoured unit is Tactical Marines. Now, I will make a caveat for this, which is that I am not a Tactical Marine fanboy by any means. If any of you are thinking that, then I'm sorry, but you are mistaken. I didn't own any Tactical Marines or any troop choices, Tactical Marine Scouts, any of the current troop choices, until the 6th edition Blood Angels Codex dropped. Until that point, I was pure Assault Marines, because Blood Angels used to be able to take Assault Marines as troops. And I always used Assault Marines, and I loved my Assault Marines. And it was with great resentment that I begrudgingly bought enough 2 boxes of Tactical Marines for myself so I could take troops in my Blood Angels army when the 6th edition Codex dropped. But I've learned to use them, and I've learned to love them, and they're really flexible, really good at plugging a gap. And if you are just starting out, Primaries are great, and if you want to spend the money on them, they're really good DACA. They can always just chew through units, fire away. They've got the AP -1, which means they're really useful against a lot of vehicles as well, putting most vehicles onto 4-up saves, winning them on 5s. They're useful, they're good. They can get around the battlefield, they can run, they can shoot, they can advance and shoot if they use the auto bolt rifle. They're really, really good. Primaries are really, really good. Scouts, they can really specialize, they can help you, and a lot of people really like the Scouts, but for me, I just don't find them that effective. I've tried out Tactical Marines and Scouts, and I've ended up settling on Tactical Marines every time in my list. And as I've said, Tactical Marines just bring that flexibility. They're cheap. You can get hold of them for next to nothing and get your Blood Angels army started straight away. Get playing bigger points value straight away because you can spend your hard-earned cash on those elite choices and that kind of thing. The Tactical Marines give you loads of little spare parts along with those elite choice boxes, so you can combine those to build your characters. So for just some cheap elites, so for some elite boxes, and your Tactical Marines, you'll be able to build all your characters. So you're just building a big collection straight away, very cheaply. They let you do loads of different stuff on the battlefield. So when you're just starting out and just expanding your collection, you can do a load of different things with those units. For me, I think they are the wisest choice when you are getting into Blood Angels or Space Marines in general. So I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you found it entertaining. This has been the Schola Progenium. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.